Welcome to the HR Empowerment Podcast, where we will uncover strategies and new insights from HR professionals who discuss up-to-date regulations, best practices, and the most pressing topics like diversity and equity, leadership, dealing with difficult situations, and much more that affect your bottom line and business. Thanks for joining us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 3 of 5 in the series of Lifelong Fulfillment in Action. We are here with Jim Boswell, and we are talking about the power of self-determination in your personal life as well as your work life. But today we're really focusing on your work life. Welcome back, Jim.
Thank you. Great to be here today.
Absolutely. And how you doing up there in upstate New York, JC?
I'm cold, Wendy. I'm cold.
I'm sorry, Jim Boswell and I are not cold. We are in the southern United States. However, just recently, I was driving through Mississippi for the week doing a 3-day training from north to south, and there was snow on the Gulf Coast. I was like, where am I? What planet have I been transferred to? All right. With that said, hey, Jim, you have so many years of experience in, my goodness, almost every role on the executive level, operations, marketing, sales, and some pretty big name companies. I am so honored for you to be here today. And I want to continue this conversation so that we can help our listeners, really focus on self-determination. So what do we even mean by self-determination?
Well, if I go back to what I was as a early 20-something, I knew one thing, and that is I knew I couldn't possibly be overeducated. There was a lot of stuff I needed to learn. And I was kind of a late bloomer. That's one of the reasons I did a stint in the U.S. Navy submarines and then got out and then went to get a master's degree. And things started to gel about then. So, you might say, like most people, I spent my 20s trying to find myself. And that's actually very true. And there was a lot I didn't know. All I knew was education was the key to remedying that. And experience certainly would help at the same time. So you get the counterpoint of, hey, I'm employed. They want me to do this, da-da-da-da. I don't necessarily like that, but I like this over here. You begin to distill your own vision for yourself. You begin to come to grips with the idea of, can I ever be happy employed by somebody else? And I'm kind of a rebel. I quote that I am probably a plank owner on the lunatic fringe because I don't see employment quite the same way. I see my responsibilities as to be self-managed, productive in the environment, not necessarily following the party line, but adding value. So every day I would ask myself as an employee, how do I add value to the company and my situation within the company where it's a win-win? I always look for win-win, not win-loss. So I joined companies typically that were smaller and startups like Advanced Micro Devices after Hewlett-Packard. And I found that the smaller companies were a lot better at managing really high-end talent. That was one thing. They were also, to get that talent, willing to share the wealth, so to speak. So as you contributed to a commonly understood goal, that everybody benefited. So there were stock programs, there was stock awards, there were, all kinds of ways to participate where your effort was visible in something besides just a paycheck. And they encouraged creativity. I took one account over in sales at Hitachi, where the Hewlett-Packard account, they were going to get thrown out. They were at $3 million a year. And in 3 years, using things that the Japanese don't like to do and Americans didn't quite get their hands around, we changed that relationship, and it was $300 million a year inside 3 years. So wow. Creativity generates value. It can be authentic. And at the same time, it can drive what the company wants. And the company wants revenues. But they want a relationship they can depend upon year in, year out also. And it cements that kind of a relationship too. So that's just one instance. And I loved it. It was just fabulous. It was like being on the bleeding edge of business. And I didn't get a lot of kickbacks and no's. It didn't mean everything I wanted to do got done. But by and large, I had a lot of fun doing it. And it was the real me producing what they wanted. And so it was a good synergy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you giving them what they were looking for by being creative also helped other employees, be happy with their job. So go ahead, JC. I know you were about to jump in there.
A report by Deloitte reveals that organizations with a robust learning culture are 92% more likely to develop creatively innovative products and processes. And in 2022, 62.3% of U.S. workers reported being satisfied with their jobs, marking the highest level of job satisfaction recorded since the survey began in 1987. Back to you.
That's interesting. And that's from that survey is from the conference board, right, JC?
That is correct.
So I want to look into that and to see how it is now. Maybe, it's just started 2025, so 2024 about satisfaction, because it's interesting that you just mentioned that. I was just giving a presentation earlier today and was just talking about employee satisfaction versus an employee engagement. So that's a whole other podcast, right? But it's like somebody could be really, really happy with their job, but that doesn't mean they're actually doing what they were paid to do. So that's another conversation for another time, folks. With that said, let's get back to you, Jim Boswell, and talk to us, a little bit more about just making sure we're self-determined. Like, are we not only satisfied, but are we doing what we are supposed to be doing for the company?
Right. Well, there's different points in a company engagement where you do that. When you decide, your authentic self, where does it fit in the workplace? And your first work, you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn a lot of things you don't like, a lot of things you do like. And so getting really thinking that it's going to be perfect as a 20-something is a false goal. Your idea is to go do work, get to understand what the employers are asking from you, get to understand what you have to give, and where's the match, not the dismatch. Find the match and put your efforts into that. Right. At the same time, if you're on the learning curve, then it begins to become a little clearer, enough to where the next time you're going to change a job, because you will change jobs, there's no 30-year single employer anymore, is you're going to have a better idea about where you want to go. And you will probably leverage it either by discipline or by a referral out of the company that you've got, somebody you know. The recruiting of yourself will be easier than when you're 25 and you just basically need a job in say, the discipline you got your college degree in or the training that you took. Right. It's a different thing. The next time after that, it's much easier because you have a better fit in that second job. And now you can start saying, okay, well, I know I'm going to have to change again. You could start planning. Well, where would I go? What else will build me as well as build a company at the same time? So you get smarter each time. You have to understand there are road bumps. I've been reduced and forced out of my position. I have been fired. I have fired myself. So things happen. And you have to kind of get a little bit toughened up to accept the fact that it's not a straight climb to the top. It is a climb, a little bit of retrenchment and camping out for a while, then another climb. So it takes time to do that. And all of these jobs build on each other if you make them work for you. And
love it. Thank you so much.
Having a plan helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to episode 3 of our 5-part series on lifelong fulfillment and action. In our next episode, episode 4, we're going to cover creating a life of purpose in a world of work, which unfortunately we all do have to work. I say unfortunately, but I'm a work addict myself. I did want to mention another training that is coming up in Aurora Training Advantage on February 27th. It's about confrontation skills. And the reason I mentioned this in this topic that we're talking about today is sometimes we are going to have to push back on our supervisors, even if we're not a supervisor ourselves. So check that out on the auroratrainingadvantage.com website. Thanks for joining us. Tune in to episode 4 next.
Thank you for joining the HR Empowerment Podcast, brought to you by Aurora Training Advantage. We hope you've gained new insight and strategies to navigate the HR profession. We look forward to you joining us again on the HR Empowerment Podcast.